first of all, shall we say, for years, the community that has called itself spiritual has tried to, shall we say, separate and avoid the topic of politics. But politics is everything.
So can you talk to me about President Trump and his role in the shift in consciousness, or what's happening at the moment for humanity? Many of us are quite baffled as to why he was elected in the first place. So if you can give us some clarity as...
you understand, in the moment of fear, one tries to bring, shall we say, stability, which holds to one's desires, one's need for security and safety. And so one chooses, shall we say, the strong arm of the law. But strong arms are more often taken up by the lawless, not by the law. So this man is not who you think he is. This man represents the old universe. I already said that the old universe would attempt to hold on by whatever means possible. And so that is the case. And so you have brought yourself in that regard, shall we say, closer to uprising. The uprising that eventually and almost always ends in conflict. The world as such is not divided into countries. You wanted globalization and now you have it. But your globalization is attempting to hold on to power, as always. So what is the alternative? Because both sides want control, both sides want to separate rather than look at the whole. And yet spiritual uplifting is suggesting that it is now the time of wholeness. The planet has to wake up, and everyone has to play a role in keeping it in balance. So you cannot, shall we say, attack one part of the world and starve another part of the world and attempt to hold on to power and greed and so forth for your own benefit, because the whole is shattering. Do you understand? And so this leader as such is leading the charge into, shall we say, a choice. The world has a choice. And eventually, whether it is at this time or after the destruction, do you understand? After the wars that will follow, if it is not heeded, then eventually the change will occur. There is no stopping the evolutionary shift. But it requires those that want to move towards the progressive to come out, to take a stand and to stop avoiding. So I would say, if you want to avoid this, you have to take your part that is in your system to vote with where you wish to go. You have to decide which side of the divide you want to be on, because, as I say, those that decide one way will experience a very different world to those that choose to avoid it. They will, shall we say, stay in the old pattern and be, shall we say, picked upon by it until destruction occurs.
So is this upcoming general election for the United States, which is in November, is this more significant than previous ones, or in terms of the global awakening and the shift in consciousness?
Of course. Of course, it is the final stand. You understand, this has been where the country has been for hundreds of years, wanting to avoid being universal, wanting to hold on to its powers and what it sees as its assets, rather than spreading it around the planet as a whole, where everyone will benefit, even themselves. But if you cannot see that because of the blindness of, shall we say, greed and desire, then the consequences are, shall we say, that there is more conflict. More conflict because the whole nature of the planet will cause it. You cannot separate, shall we say, all aspects of life as you understand it, because it is all arrives at through leadership and vision.
Okay.
So shall we say, your law of attraction, your law of magnetism requires a vision. Let us not say visualization, because that brings it into a specific tone, but a vision is where things align towards a greater harmony and bringing together for a beneficial outcome for all. Leadership, I want to say, in this case, brings a vision to all people of the world. Otherwise, the conflicts across the planet will continue, and they are everywhere. Why are they everywhere? It's because the leadership planet, the leadership of the planet's guide lost direction, refused to take that role and return to its militarism. Now that is over.
Thanks for watching. We hope this content resonates and with your help raises planetary awareness. Get free access to the best Mercredan content and opportunities to ask your own questions to Mercredan by subscribing. Visit channelingmercredan.com/subscribe or click the link in the description.